Good day, students. You're welcome to genetics class. And don't forget that genetics takes a larger percentage of the questions in JAM and WAEC. So what is genetics? Genetics is the study of heredity and variation. So we are combining two things in our definition. So let's have study of heredity and variation. So the two things I said we are combining are we have heredity and variation. We have talked about variation. That is the difference that occurs among organisms of same species. So what is heredity? Heredity is a transfer of inheritable characters. Let me repeat again. The transfer of inheritable characters from parents to offspring. So let's have the definition. So we say heredity, thus, is the transfer of what kind of character? The character has to be inheritable. So let's say inheritable traits now. Heritable characters from parents to offspring. So what is the key word in this definition of heredity? The keywords are transfer. You are moving something. And the other is, what are we transferring? We are transferring characters that can be passed from parent to offspring. So we can redefine genetics by saying genetics is the study of transfer. Instead of saying heredity, just replace this sentence. It's the study of transfer of inheritable traits or characters from parents to offspring. So that means that we can look at what is meant by inheritable characters. Inheritable characters or traits. From the word inheritable, they are traits that are transferable from parents to offspring. So you have that in the definition. Traits that are transferable from parents to offspring. And these inheritable traits, okay, let me define it for you. They are transferable traits. I think that's better. So these traits are controlled by the gene. Take note of that. The inheritable traits, they are located on the gene, or we say they are controlled by the genes. We are going to define the genes when we get to terminologies in genetics. So what are examples of inheritable traits? What are the traits that a parent can transfer from himself or itself to the offspring? For example, you have tongue rolling, you can transfer tongue rolling. Tongue rolling, you can transfer it. You can transfer the height. You can transfer the height. The parent can transfer the height. The parent can transfer shape. The parent can transfer the shape. So we have different types of shape. You can say the shape of the nose, the shape of the ear, so shape generally. The parent can also transfer what is called the size of the earlobe, for example. You can also transfer color. Yes, it's becoming interesting because I'm not making it to expand too much. So we have colors, different traits under color. For example, you have the color of the eye. So you say color of the eye, color of the skin, you can transfer that. In fact, you can also transfer the color of the hair that grows on the skin, the color of the hair. You can transfer what is called the fingerprints. Exactly. You can transfer the fingerprints. You can transfer the fingerprints. You can transfer the fingerprints. They can also transfer the blood group. Blood group of the father can mix with the blood group of the mother to produce a type of blood group that is a combination of both parents. So we say the blood group. So that is what is called inheritable characters. So let's look at the contributors to the study of genetics. The first thing is that the person or the scientist that studies genetics is called geneticist. Let's say together, geneticist. You find this in the past question, always. So we say a geneticist is a person, geneticist is a person, okay, that studies genetics. Is a person that studies genetics. So let's look at our lovely geneticists. So the first person I'm going to mention, which is the father of genetics, is that particular genius called Gregor. This is an R, Gregor Mendel. Gregor Mendel. So I'm going to talk much about Gregor Mendel in my discussion about or talk about genetics. So the Gregor Mendel is the father, take note of that, is the father of genetics. Okay, what did he discover? He discovered and propounded the laws of genetics through his experiments. So we can say he propounded the law of genetics. And the law of genetics are two. When we get there, we're going to explain the law of genetics to us. So the next scientist is that particular scientist called Thomas. Okay, before that, so Gregor Mendel used in the experiment the pea plant. Okay, because the reason I'm highlighting this is because each of this information is its own a question in the objective questions. So we need to know what kind of experiment the Gregor Mendel carried out. He carried out the experiment using the pea plant. Now, the next scientist is called the Thomas Morgan. And Thomas Morgan, he discovered what is called the gene law of inheritance, or the chromosome law of inheritance. Once you remember gene and chromosome, okay, it is easier for you to know what Thomas Morgan discovered. Are you there? So he discovered what is called the gene law of inheritance, and he discovered what is called the chromosome law of inheritance. Don't forget that the gene is located on the chromosome. So either you say gene that is located on the chromosome, or you say the chromosome itself. So Thomas Morgan was able to explain the location of the gene on the chromosome, and he was able to explain that that particular structure responsible for the transfer of traits that Gregor Mendel discovered, that particular structure is called the gene. He was able to use the gene to relate to what is called inheritance. He was able to use the chromosome to relate to what is called inheritance. And Thomas Morgan used what is called the fruit fly. The fruit flies. Don't forget that Gregor Mendel used the pea plant, while Thomas Morgan used the fruit fly. You're going to see this in the past question. And the scientific name for the fruit fly he used is called Drosophila melanogaster. Let's say together, Drosophila melanogaster. You find this in the past question when we are solving the past question. So we have fruit fly. Scientific name is Drosophila melanogaster. So this is scientific name. So you're going to underline that. Drosophila melanogaster. So we're going to stop our class here today, and in the next class, I'm going to be talking about why did Gregor Mendel use the pea plants in his experiment, and why did Thomas Morgan use the Drosophila melanogaster in the experiment. Goodbye. We'll meet in the next class.